This?
Really?
You're taking bets? Go with what Hank is suggesting, too. But honestly, if you leave it to me, we will be in and out 15 minutes.
Thank you. I don't have that original. All I have is this one from Honey here. It's the
Okay.
same intro.
Good evening. This is the time and place for the meeting of the Planning Commission. It's a regular meeting. We posted the agenda. I'd like to have a roll call first.
Commissioner Astorian?
Here.
Commissioner Landrigan?
Here.
Commissioner Lee?
Here.
Commissioner Schitz?
Here.
And Commissioner Yesaya?
Here.
All right. Could you please give me the report regarding the posting of the agenda?
The agenda for this meeting was posted on Wednesday, April 25th, 2012, on the bulletin board outside City Hall and on the city's website.
And this is a Wednesday, May 2nd, 2012, regular meeting of the Planning Commission. Mr. Yusayan, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. Everyone, please stand up. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have approval of the minutes on our agenda for April 18th, 2012.
I move that we accept.
I do have a comment on it. It says the road diet is on North Glendale Montrose Avenue. It's actually on Honolulu.
And that's on page 3?
That's on page 3. There's also a mention of it on page 4. Business outreach on Brand Boulevard and Montrose Avenue. Merchants should probably say Honolulu as well.
And also, I would like to change, the Pledge of Allegiance was actually led by Mr. Chairperson, Commissioner Sheets, soon to be Chairperson. Any other changes to the minutes?
I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Abstain.
Thank you. All right, we have oral communications. Oral communications is, discussion is limited to items that are not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. The commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. But I just got several of these in here, and I don't believe any of them are here for oral communication. If I'm wrong, will you wave at me? You are here for oral communication? Or for you here for the agenda item that's next on Rimcrest? Okay, thank you. That's what I thought. All right, thank you. So we have no oral communication. Item number 6 is a zoning appeal. So it is an appeal?
It's a continued item. It's not an appeal. It's
So
an
that's
old
incorrect.
business item. That is incorrect.
Old business item is the tentative parcel map, GLN number 1628, and it is continued from April 18th, 2012. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the Commission. As mentioned, this case was continued from the April 18th Planning Commission meeting. This is a request to subdivide one residential lot with an average current slope that exceeds 20% into 3 residential lots and develop a single-family dwelling on each of the 2 vacant lots. The property is located at 2116 Rimcrest and is known as parcel map number GLN 1628. Property is zoned R1R, which is a restricted residential zone, floor area District 3, and has a general plan designation of low-density residential. A negative declaration, PEIF 2010-013, was prepared on January 9th of 2012. The project description has been updated to reflect current numbers, and there are no new impacts as a result of the update. The subject property is surrounded by single-family dwellings in the R1R zone, also floor area district, ratio district number 3. The property's frontage on Rimcrest is approximately 62 feet and 728 feet of frontage on Aspen Oak Lane. The total site area is approximately 96,548 square feet, or 2.2 acres. The site is currently developed with a single-family dwelling accessed off of Rimcrest Drive, and the topography is such that the site slope up to the north from Aspen Oak Lane. The average current slope of the subject site, as calculated by the applicant, is 48%. The average current slope of the new lots before grading are 50.3% for Lot 2 and 55.6% for Lot 3. Since the site has an average current slope exceeding 30%, the average lot area for the subdivision is required to be 30,000 square feet. In this case, the average lot area is 32,183 square feet. The property is defined as a mountainous terrain, and therefore the resulting lot areas cannot be less than the neighborhood average. The average lot area within 500 feet of the subject property is 22,000 square feet. The proposed lot areas are 35,635 square feet for Lot 1, 31,935 square feet for Lot 2, 28,978 square feet for Lot 3. The proposed lot areas comply with both the minimum lot area and are above the average for the neighborhood. The proposed homes will be compatible in size and scale to the existing residential development pattern in the neighborhood. Moreover, the house on Lot 2 will occupy 11% of the lot, and the house on Lot 3 will occupy 12%, thereby leaving the majority of the lot area to remain as ungraded open space, except for an area where the driveway will be constructed for ingress and egress purposes. Proposed homes will not result in the overbuilding of the lot or crowding of the neighboring properties, since the new houses will exceed all minimum setback distances as well as meet other development standards as specified by the zoning code. The proposed homes will require approval of the Design Review Board in order to ensure compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. The Design Review Board approval is required prior to the issuance of any building permits. Staff believes the proposed subdivision complies with the Hillside Design Guidelines, and the applicant is seeking approval to create 2 driveways and pads to serve the new houses. The applicant is proposing to have 422 cubic yards of fill and 1,790 cubic yards of cut for Lot 2, 410 cubic yards of fill, and 1,587 cubic yards of cut for Lot 3. There is no grading proposed for Lot 1, which contains the existing single-family house. Planning Division staff is recommending that the tentative parcel map number GLN 1628 be approved, subject to the conditions that you have attached, and I'm available for any questions, and it concludes my presentation. I'd also like to mention that since it was a continued hearing and there was testimony received a while back, that the applicant be allowed time to respond to the comments that were made during that previous meeting. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Any questions or comments of staff?
I just want a clarification. When you talk about the average lot area being 30,000 square foot, and you got one at 31,935 and 28,978, you add them together to get your average, or
All 3 of them then divide.
all 3 of them, although one of them already has house on it?
As part of, all of them have to meet the average.
What about, if I have comments on the conditions, is that something that we'll talk about later, on the conditions?
If, I think that's probably better to talk about later.
Yeah, okay.
other questions on the presentation, or?
Nothing now.
All right. We have the applicant, who is Serge Adamian, and I would like to invite you to come up. Please give us your name and an address, and you have 15 minutes to do your presentation, as well as I will allow you 15 minutes to rebut the previous questions that the public had presented at the last meeting. You may take all of it or less of it as you wish, sir, as you need.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Serge Adamian, address 220 South Kenwood Street, Suite 305, Glendale. I'm representing the owner of the project today, and I will not take 15 minutes right now unless there are questions, and I'll be very quick and brief, and I'll hopefully can reserve some time to rebut the comments that we'll receive later. Just very quickly, as far as comments that we've received before, the project meets the density and lot size requirements of the general plan, and that's the key word for any under subdivision map act. The two new homes that are proposed are at the bottom of the hill, and this is done with the particular purpose to minimize grading and maximize open space. The colors and textures that we'll be using for the proposed homes will blend with the natural hillside, will be compatible with the neighborhood. We're proposing retaining walls, which are particularly designed to minimize grading. And in addition, those walls are designed as such with the heights, etc., to meet the zoning ordinance and design guidelines, hillside design guidelines, such as 3 walls in succession, maximum 5 feet each, etc. We're meeting all those requirements. The footprints of the homes, the proposed new homes, are 11% and 12%. They're pretty moderate and leaving significant open space. So design of the house not only are currently as proposed compatible with the neighborhood, they're going to go further through optimization, through design review board review process. There are comments we received that in the previous hearing that street is not wide enough. Actually, there's 50-foot right-of-way and 36 feet roadway width, which is pretty significant. With this, I conclude my comments, and if there are any questions, I can answer them. Mr. Hamlet Zorabian is the architect. He can also come in here and say a couple of words, and in case there are questions, both of us will try to answer.
If you would like to have him
Yes.
speak, you still have
Yes,
15 minutes,
if he can
please.
come.
And I do have a card for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, I just would like to confirm with the applicant that they did have a chance to see the prior tape of the prior hearing, so they are able to respond to the questions that came at the prior meeting and comments.
Yes. First of all, let me begin by stating my name. My name is Hamlet Zorabians. I'm the project architect, and my address is 3467 Ocean View Boulevard, Suite B, Glendale, California, 91206. Yes, I do. I just want to reconfirm that I've viewed the tape. And, viewing the tape in very much detail, I can say that, and also in conjunction with the staff report that we have received. I've reviewed the entire staff report, obviously, and all I can say is that in the staff report itself, it's a very thorough report which answers the concerns, in my opinion, that were raised in the last meeting. But if there is any particular question that is unanswered, we'll be available to answer those questions. So I don't want to go and reiterate all those questions and answers. I think to me it would be just very, very repetitious to restate whatever was in the staff report. I personally read the staff report, and they have done a very vigorous investigation. The plan and the proposed project was reviewed by all the applicable municipalities and agencies. We don't have any adverse recommendations. We don't have any issues that was particularly raised against the project and the design of it and how it's situated on the slope. So with that said, I just want to say that, first of all, I want to appreciate the process that we went through with the planning staff. And it's taken a long time, but the time that was necessary for the planning staff and us to be able to reach a solution that would be in full compliance with all the ordinances and intent of the code. So with that said, I just want to state that we have assembled very professional, and I would say one of the most professional and able engineering team to begin with in the design process. And our members are here for any questions that you might have or neighbors will raise. And also referring to the recommendations of the approval and conditions of the approval. Obviously, I've reviewed it, and as an architect, and reviewed it with the owner, we are in full agreement with the recommendations, and we will adhere to all the recommendations and the conditions that there is there. So, with that said, I just want to don't want to reiterate all the issues that were raised the last time. I really think that everything is addressed in the staff report. But if there is any point, particular or specific points that you want to open up, or I'll be available here to answer any of them. I'll be available, and also we have our team of engineers here for any engineering, issues. And if there is any particular question right now, I'll be able to answer.
Commissioner Chang.
Yes.
Lee.
Does height that you mentioned, 32 feet, include height of the solar panels? I noticed that you have solar panels on the roof.
It will include them.
It'll include them, so
That's true.
It is hidden behind the structure parapet.
Yeah, what we have a very short.
Not on any type of steel structure.
Oh no. It will be integrated within the roof.
Yeah. I know this is not part of the design review.
Yes.
This is a land use hearing, but
Yes.
I was just curious.
Yeah, but it will be definitely introduced at that
So
time.
that 32 feet includes your solar panel?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that is the height that we're very comfortable with as far as the designing the house itself.
Can you say?
Can you just briefly walk us through how the process of the site selection for the two lots, and why you and your client think this is the best area, best location for this site, and what were sort of the process that you went through for that?
Sure.
And also, if you can briefly just touch on the design of it and how it specifically meets with the design guidelines, the hillside design guidelines, and if you can talk about the backyard area as well. So I
Yes.
noticed there's a sort of backyard area as well, part of the house.
Well, I can address those very briefly. Obviously, as Serge, Mr. Damian mentioned it already, the buildings themselves will go to an optimization period when we go to DRB. But as far as how we reach these solutions, I can address very briefly without going necessarily into a design review board guidelines. But the selection of the location, obviously, we needed an access to the site. So the access couldn't have been from Rimcrest, obviously, because what we have here, as indicated in the report, there's a very short frontage on the Rimcrest for the Lot 1. But when we come to Aspen Oak, we have a complete frontage which is in excess of 240 feet, something like that. So again, I don't have it written here, so I just have to guess. It's about 250, 260 feet of frontage over here, maybe even more than that. 728. That's actually 3 times. So clearly, the access of each property. The best access to the property itself should be taken from the Aspen Oak. There is no way that there's a possibility that we can take it from the Rimcrest, because it would necessitate a long, if you will, driveway to bring it down and create a pad in that sense that we will have basically much more grading generated, which would be against actually the intent of the code, because the intent of the code obviously is to nestle the design of the house in the hillside and having a minimized impact to the slope itself. So we didn't want to generate a lot of driveways and retaining walls. So access is very logical to be from the Aspen Oak side. Now, there you have the size, average size of the lot themselves. So this is not a subdivision which we have 20 lots or 15 lots. So it was pretty straightforward how we're going to be dividing it. In the process, the existing house obviously is to remain. So what we had to make sure that after the subdivision, the existing house house and the site that is allowed to that particular house would support it, and it would not be non-conforming. So in order for us to do that, we begin there. So we say, okay, we have a house which is certain square footage right now existing. So what would be the conforming or required lot area? That's how it begins. So then that we separated, we gave that 32,000 square feet of lot area to the first house. Okay? That's a given. So therefore, we didn't make that existing house non-conforming. So it stands on its own, and it's in full compliance and conformance. So there's no question there. Then the rest of the area that is remaining, we split it in two, and very carefully, as far as locating where the house is going to go, we normally study the contours. And studying the contours, we found a couple of locations that would be the best scenario for us, because it would yield the shortest distance of driveway. It will yield the minimum amount of grading that is necessary. And therefore, we also, in the hillside area, the height, as Mr. Lee also mentioned, obviously it's a concern. So we had a lot of parameters, zoning parameters, that we had to design these two buildings within. And so successfully we have designed it, we have made the models. I also have a 3D model of it, which would be presented in the DRB session, where we can actually show you all around. As far as the retaining walls are concerned, obviously the ordinance requires that any retaining walls in the front yard of a property cannot exceed 5 feet. So you have to be very sensitive to that, how you're designing it, where you're putting your house, and to yield maximum 5 feet, retaining wall. And as Mr. Adamian also said, in certain areas where, particularly when you're coming to, if I may, these areas of the project, for instance, you see a successive, 3 5-foot, retaining walls with landscaping between them. So that's consistent, again, with the ordinance. The retaining wall, which is in the back and the rear of the properties, according to the ordinances, it cannot exceed 15 feet. Now, if you can see the model here, and if you're driving up or down, those walls basically are hidden away from the view, generally speaking. They're basically blocked by the house itself, you see. So that's, again, in compliance with the code. As far as the size of the house, it's in compliance with the code. As far as number of parking that we have designed for those two houses, it's in full compliance. Then, if we want to comply with the hillside ordinance, obviously the design will be an issue that needs to be optimized, as I said, in DRB. However, the remaining item would be the landscaping. So, as far as the landscaping is concerned, we also brought in Mr. Larry Tyson, and he has designed the landscaping specifically for a hillside ordinance, and the type of plants and the quantity of them and so on and so forth is being obviously designed generally, taken from the list that is acceptable to hillside ordinance, and it's complying with the hillside ordinance. The rest of the balance of the hillside will remain as is all around, so it will not be touched. So it will be remaining as an open space, if you will. So that's how we generally, without going so much into the details, this was already detailed, but not going through the details, the location-wise, the access, obviously, the size of it, the coverage of it, and landscaping, those were the issues that are all encompasses our design and our compliance with the ordinances that we have, especially the hillside ordinance.
So the retaining walls in the back creates a backyard area.
Yes.
So the hillside ordinance, as I understand it, it discourages retaining walls in a backyard.
Mhm.
What was your rationality in going towards doing that anyway?
Yes. Yeah, the rationale is that it's a technical issue, because when you go into getting your building permit, you have to obtain grading permit. And grading permit will ask you to do a retaining wall there. You cannot you cannot design, in other words, a house right on top of a slope because of the safety factor. You have the slope coming down directly to the house. So there should be some sort of protection for the house itself. So they're requiring, that this is the requirement, they're requiring to have a distance clear, 15-foot clear distance from the rear of the house to the toe of the slope. So wherever you don't have that distance, then they're allowing you to, not that either encouraging or anything, it's not discouraging or encouraging issue. Issue is that it's a technical requirement that I have to have a retaining wall to create that 15 feet. We just didn't do that for, to be able to use that space or any design as far as aesthetically that we were concerned. You see what I mean? It's a very technical issue. So that is a requirement by the grading division. So we had to comply with. That is why the report speaks to that, which everything complies as far as the retaining walls. That's a prescription from them.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Thanks.
please, Commissioner.
I noticed that when I was out there, there was water runoffs connecting all the way through the lot there. And it seems like your house pads or house is sitting on those water runoffs. How are you taking care of the water runoffs?
Yes, absolutely. And Public Works have spoken there as far as the conditions are concerned. We need to do that. So after this hearing, when we go into Design Review Board, we will address it again schematically, but during the process of engineering actually for the building permit, that needs to be addressed. And we have already conceptually addressed that. Our civil engineers have already addressed that. And let me also add that actually not only that point is going to actually impact the existing drainage runs, but actually it will help them and improve them in such. Because if there is any broken waterways, if there is any ditches that are broken or any catch basins that are not functioning, that will be all taken care of during construction. And the new ones would be actually much better in size and quantity because of the new codes have been improved. And this was done a long time ago. So standards that we had to adhere to as far as developing these two lots, it would be much, much stringent, if you will, than the standard it was before. One of the issues that you have always on the slope is that runoff water that comes down, you want to decrease the slope. Because when it gushes down in a heavy rain, it just comes and splashes and goes everywhere, you know what I'm saying? So it is very important how this is designed, and with catch basins we are able to reduce the speed. So we're going to collect the water all around, and then our landscaping that we're proposing there, obviously, very obviously, it's going to help this situation. So we're going to redirect the water, if you will, from sides of the building through the catch basins, and it's going to go through the curb that we are responsible to actually build for this particular project in front.
I have a question.
Commissioner Sheets.
This may or may not relate to the last question. I noticed there's an easement for a storm drain, an easement to the city.
Yes.
Is that directly related to your design for runoff, or is that something that the city required for other reasons?
Well, it's also spoken for in the report as for Public Works is. Yes, it's just a runoff easement, which we're going to have to respect that and keep it. And it does not actually coincide with the construction itself. We'll be able to keep it. That's one of the conditions of the approval, so which we are agreeing to it. We will agree to it, that easement. So, in other words, this is what I'm saying, Commissioner. If let's say you have a project and then there is an easement through your property.
Yeah, I'm okay with your answer. I guess from the city standpoint, does that relate directly to these lots, or is that something that because you had other plans that you need that easement, something around that?
Commissioner Sheets said it's directly related to the development of these lots.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. Now, I'm going to ask you before you leave,
Yes, ma'am.
this was your presentation. Do you want to take time, do you want me to combine the rebuttal period with the other rebuttal period after we have a public comment?
I would really appreciate
We'll
if you would
allow you
add that.
15 minutes to rebut at the end.
Yes, it is definitely our intention to resolve any concerns that there are as much as we can. So we are available here if there's any questions. If you give us enough time, we'll be able to answer those questions for you.
All right, we'll give you 15 minutes, and if you need more, we'll also
Okay, thank
add
you.
a little more to it.
Madam Chair, if I may ask Mr. Adamian a
Yes.
question. Mr. Adamian, Mrs. Zorabian, your colleague and yourself referred to the word optimization 3 times. Since we're all using a technology word, I'm going to give you something in a nanosecond. This optimization has nothing to do with the subdivision as we speak, because once this body approves the subdivision, goes to the city council, the boundaries of this subdivision are not going to change. Your optimization that you're referring to, I believe you're referring to your design review and design changes, any other conditions that the city may impose or consider to impose in future. Am I correct?
Yes, you're correct.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. All right, any more questions from the commission to staff or to the applicant? We will be having public comments. We will, many of you were here the last time, and we will allow 3 minutes for comments per person. I would ask that you courteously listen to each other, and if you have already spoken to us about your concerns, we heard it. I know that last time you did not get to see the model or actually see the staff report, so I understand that there are probably far more interesting things that you all have looked at and have comments on. So 3 minutes, please. Let's be courteous, and then after we have heard from you, we will allow the applicant to respond to questions. My first person I will read 2 names off, and you all will know, is Alec Bagdasarian. And if I said your name wrong, I apologize. And then I've already had Hamlet. No, I haven't. Hamlet Adaminian. Okay, all right. So you will be after Mr. Bagdasarian. Thank you for your patience with me.
Should I start?
Yes, please do.
Hello, my name is Alec Bagdasarian. I'm a resident in 1911 Ramshorn Court, which is about 6-7 houses away from the proposed project. I carefully listened to the presentation regarding the project, the proposed 2 new lots, and I must say I'm very impressed by the due diligence exercise in laying out the houses and the planning that is taking place. I strongly believe that the proposed project would add value to the neighborhood. And actually, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Boniari in his vision in seeing the opportunity to take some vacant lots and convert those vacant lots to 2 beautiful houses that we will have in the neighborhood. I speak of experience. Next door to my house in 1911 Ramshorn Court, there was a vacant lot at the corner of Rimcrest and Starwell. That lot was sitting there for 10 years. All kind of kids would come in, drink, coyotes, animals, and so forth. And about a year or 2 ago, I had the opportunity, to express my opinion on a plan to build a house there that required some variances. The new building is built closer to my house, does not have the corner house in Starwell and Rimcrest, and of course I had no problem. I said, great, congratulations, go build your house. And I can say that I am very, very happy with the outcome. I mean, where there was a vacant lot, there's a beautiful house. When I had to hear animal noises, I have a nice neighbor that I'm talking to. And given the new city codes, I believe any house that is built would be much prettier, and if it's the right expression, it would be a nicer house than the ones built 20 years ago or so. So I think this is a win-win situation for everybody. We're taking few lots that are just dirts and doing the due diligence, and thank to you for overseeing the project and the design review board and others that would continue to monitor the appropriateness of the buildings and so forth. It would just be a great addition to our city of Glendale.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, please, courteous, Mr. Adamian.
Madam Chairman, members of Commission, my name is Hamlet Adamian, no relations to Serge Adamian. I live at 2391 One Review Drive, down the street from the project location at 2116 Rimcrest. Been at that location for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of houses go up in my time there. My neighbors and my family have always been concerned with the crime rate excuse me, and safety of our neighborhood, especially with the recent surge in crime in that area. And I believe that building the two homes will have a positive impact in reducing the crime just by adding sheer number of residents in that area. There's some vacant areas, and I believe having the houses there will actually help with the crimes. Also, the project will offer more landscaping instead of bare rocks and bushes, which will reduce the fire hazard and add to the beauty of the neighborhood and add to the value of the homes in the area. So I'm in favor of the project.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we will have Ms. Susan Michelli, and then after that, we will have Charles Santos.
Madam Commissioner and Commissioners, my name is Susan Michelli. I'm a resident, and I live off of McGinn Drive. It is the primary, not the only, but it's a primary west side coming up the hill on the side.
Okay.
So my concern is twofold. The amount of trucks I'm concerned about. There's the speeding there on that road for normal traffic is terrible. So I realize that, going back to the first concern, the amount of trucks that they expect to go in and out, I don't know which side they'll come up, but McGinn is, I don't know if you're familiar, McGinn's on this side. Trucks started, we had a lot of construction in my area last year. Trucks started at 6:15 in the morning because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, they have to be at the site by 8 a.m. But to get to that site, it takes a good 40 minutes to come up that hill. So I had trucks coming there at 6:15 in the morning. And then trucks, 6:15 in the morning, you hear them changing gears coming up the hill because we're right at the steepness. So my concern is the amount of trucks coming through. The second is going to add congestion to the area for traffic. I'm very concerned about that. In regards to helping cut down crime, we were robbed in 2007. Our next-door neighbor was robbed in 2007. So, there's been a lot more construction since then. So I'm not sure adding more houses is going to help. I'm opposed to this. I'm very opposed to this. The amount of dirt that came out on my street, even though there wasn't on my street, was just the mud, the dirt. Yes, we have weekly cleaning, but as a resident, I don't see what the value would do to add to our neighborhood. So please make the consideration that we live there. You guys make the decision. I live there. I live with trucks coming up at 6:15 in the morning. So my question to you as I leave is, what time can the trucks start coming up that hill? Can they be at the site at 8 a.m.? Because it takes quite a while to get them come up that hill. So is the ruling that they can start work at 8 or start coming up the hill at 8?
Thank you.
thank you. Any questions for the,
Do I get an answer?
No.
we'll answer you, we'll ask staff.
Okay.
But
then
I
there's-
do have a question for Ms. Michele.
Yeah, sure,
if I may.
Commissioner.
So your primary concern is the time, the construction time, and how the noise that the trucks make, and so forth.
And the garbage and pollution, not pollution, the dirt and things they leave behind. Along with that, I clean up pollution in terms of thrown bars, wrappers, and things like that.
Very good. Okay. Thank you.
So if we picked if there was like a 10 a.m. time,
No, I'm reasonable.
That view is supported.
I'm reasonable. I just,
okay,
realistically, if you say 8 o'clock, they're not going to be there at 8 o'clock. They're going to be coming up the hill at 6:20, 6:30.
we'll keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Charles Santos, who will be followed by M.H. Oziger. And if I am sorry, is that correct? Afterwards. Thank you, sir.
Get those. Never mind.
It's like that. Okay.
Three pictures.
Okay, thank you.
Good
And
evening,
by
Commissioners.
giving us these, they become part of the public record. We're not going to give them back, just
I knew
FYI.
that. They're all
Okay.
yours.
You sure you want to depart with them?
Yeah. You can put them on your refrigerator later.
This is for the
All
record.
right, thank you. This is for,
For the record, I guess.
over that way.
They're the same as the poster boards that are.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir.
My name is Charles Santos. My office is at 28310 Roadside Drive in Agora Hills. I'm a planner, and I'm representing Stefan Martrojan. He owns 120 Aspen Oak Lane. And there are a total of 11 neighbors that I'm speaking on behalf of. Some of them will speak for themselves, but I've met with them, spoke to them, and they strongly oppose the project. Number one, this area was subdivided in 1979 per tract map. Sure. The area was subdivided in 1979 per tract map, and over the last 3 decades it's been developed. A lot of these people on Aspen Oak Lane have lived there for 2, 3, or more decades. They've raised families. And I've met with Brad, gone over some of the planning of the project, and it meets code. It's been planned and designed well. However, if this project was before you when it was subdivided back then, I don't think you'd have any opposition. But you're coming into an area, and now you're going to squeeze in 2 more houses into a place that's been built. The streets have been put in, the utilities have been put in, people have been living there for years, and you're going to be doing major construction, heavy earthwork, and a project that should have been done per the original tract map when people were subdividing and building this area out. The biggest concern is the amount of grading. $3,377 cubic yards of cut, 832 cubic yards of fill, total export 2,500, over 2,500 yards of dirt are going to be coming down that hill.
Could you go over those numbers one more time, please?
Sure.
Mr. Collins, I'd like for you to verify these numbers afterwards.
3,377 cubic yards of cut, 832 cubic yards of fill, total export 2,545 cubic yards. It may be more or less depending on shrinkage, but that's approximate.
It's on the drawing.
It's on the drawing.
Okay, thank you.
The largest dump trucks will haul about 8 to 10 cubic yards, so you're looking at about 250 to over 300 truck trips up and down that road. I'm imagining that this is going to go to a landfill or another approved site. So between Aspen Oak Lane and the 134 freeway, you're going to have trucks, and a trip is up to the site to pick up the dirt and back down. That's a lot of truck trips up and down some windy roads. that's also a safety issue for the people that live there. So that will impact hundreds of residents between the 134 and Aspen Oak Lane.
Will you give the applicant, the speaker, another minute since we interrupted him?
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So the biggest concern is the amount of grading and the hillside development in an area that's already established. People are living there. They have families there. They play in the street. This is a big impact to them. This is a big project going in right in their front yard. And also, there's existing concrete swales there that control runoff and protect that hillside and protect the homes, and there will be an impact to that. You're pulling that out. So we hope you take those into consideration, and some of the other owners from Aspen Oak Lane will be speaking, but they're the ones that feel the impact. The people on Rimcrest Drive, they have no impact. They're up on the hill. They look down on this from their backyard. These people are going to live with this every day, every morning while it's being developed.
You said 300 truck trips. Is that up and down?
250 to 300. One trip is up to the site to pick up the dirt and down. That's one
that's
trip.
a round trip.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Any questions for the speaker? Thank you, Mr. Santos. Sure, you can leave them up here. Mr. M.H. Oziger and then Helena Artunian. I hope I said that right.
Good afternoon, good evening. I'm Dr. Oziger. I've been living in that neighborhood since 1978. And I'm the next door, this proposed area. They are the third owner of this house. And in this neighborhood, I remember at least 3 landslides because of the poor construction. And nobody can guarantee that. And I was expecting that, as he mentioned, this construction, this area is finished and it's a low zone. That's the reason we invested that area. And just their neighbor, next door house, took 2 years. They made mistake. They keep doing it. Track went up and down 2-3 times. My mail box is broken because of the trucks. And there were also 3 times runaway accident in this neighborhood. And one of them hit while my kids were playing in the garage ping pong. And my 2 car damaged. They had no insurance. My insurance had to cover. And my garage doors totally damaged, and my 2 cars. They are the third owner, as I said, and the previous owners, they didn't do good retaining wall, and the dirt was running to my house. I had to spend $20,000. Nobody reimbursed me. And since they moved in, I said, please take care, at least the dirt and garbage coming, because it's upper hill. And when it heavy wind, the garbage things comes to my pool and other area. And there's the only thing they made over the retaining wall is a iron gate, which is rusted and about to fall to my house. And I said, please take care. They say they will, but it's not taking care. And I am really tired of seeing the truck going up and down and causing accidents and pollution. And as previous architect instructed, this was already zoned and divided, and the other wild animal, everybody else.
Thank you, Doctor.
The human being, they have right to live there too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Ms. Helena Artunian.
Good afternoon. My name is Helena Artunian. I am a resident at 130 Aspen Oak Lane. I have few concerns. Main concerns. First, I would like to say I'm opposed to this project. And my main concern is we are recent owners. We've been living here for 1 year on Aspen Oak. And the main reason we moved to this area was the fact that I have 2 kids and I wanted them to be less of pollution and more greenery and more safe basically safety. And major concern is how this will be unsafe for the kids. My kids are 5 and 3. They run around in the backyard, and the actual project is going to be right in front of ours, one of them at least. And the driveway is going to be right in front of us. And the fact that there's going to be over 250 huge trucks going up and down the hill is very, very concerning to me. That's the major concern. Second is going to be the debris and the pollution. If my kids have asthma, who's going to take care of that? This is a really, 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 really big concern for me. I moved away from a city to go up the hill so I will have less free air and no pollution and no debris. I cannot have 2 years of my kids' health risking, and at the age of 16 for them to have all these health issues. Third, safety. As far as the safety of the neighborhood, a lot of the neighborhoods have been robbed, and the more access and the more people that come in and out, that actually intakes safety, that you actually are pushing, you're not taking care of safety, you're doing the opposite. You're creating more unsafe areas. You don't know who's going to be coming there. You don't know the construction workers, what are they going to do, and they don't drive safely. So the damage, the debris, the safety, major, major issues. And I just want to know what the city will do in any case if anything happens to my kids' health. Because my kids, knock on wood, are very healthy. And I don't want any asthma developing. I don't want any health issues developing due to this. So I'm just letting it in front because this is really, really concerning to me. And I moved for my kids' sake, not for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next we have Arthur Jan Ilyansian.
Good evening. My name is Arthur Ilyansian. I'm the owner of 130 Aspen Oak, Helena's husband. I spoke at the prior hearing, so I'm not going to repeat the same things again. She already pretty much said the other stuff that I was just going to mention. One other thing. There is going to be damage to all the properties on the street, whether it's dust, pollution, debris, you name it, and potentially actual physical damage. We just renovated the house, we repainted the entire house. Who's going to pay for this damage? If there's damage to the property, obviously we're going to ask Mr. Boniati to pay for it. But if in the event we come to a disagreement, and God forbid it's a damage of a size that it's going to have to be litigated, believe it or not, I'm going to name the city too. And I want this to be on the public record. Another thing, I'm not going to go any further than this. Please don't take this wrong way. I'm not making any allegations. I'm not making any accusations. And I don't know what the commission's procedure is in screening out conflicts. But if there are any conflicts of interest, I would like to state that this is the time for anybody who has any personal interest in this to recuse or otherwise disqualify themselves from voting on this matter. That's it for now. I'm not going to say anything else. Thank you for everything else.
Thank you. We have Edmund Minassian, and after Mr. Minassian, Eileen Minassian.
That's my wife. I speak for Eileen Minassian. She was so worried about this. So you want to speak? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Edmund Minassian. I'm a resident in 215 Wonderview Drive. Member of Commission, thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to go quick on this. I've been there for about 25 years. I know all about the hills because I had this problem. I had a major issue with landslide. I had to spend about $50,000 for retaining wall construction. I understand those hills. I don't know whether there was a geological report done and there's any issues. I haven't seen this, but that's something that I have to look at it. But other than that, one concern I have that has not brought in was water pressure. The water pressure in that area is very, very low, about 45 to sometimes 38, especially in the mornings. I'd like to know what city is doing about that, especially in the morning when we have additional residents who are going to use that water. There's a major problem in that area. I've been living there for 25 years. The city has done nothing about it, and yet I will be very, very surprised if they allow an additional construction. There was a talk about density of a residential area, but that's does that density include utilities or accommodation for utilities for the residents? I wonder. That's what I'm asking the city to consider. The other one major issue I want to bring out that the trucks, number of trucks. Someone mentioned 250 to 300 large trucks. Well, caution, large trucks cannot go very, very hard to go through that area. There's an area from Magin to Nolan. That's a very sharp corner. Large trucks cannot go there, so it's got to be smaller trucks. Hence, the number is going to increase from 250 to 300, I would say the double. You cannot go around 30 foot of trucks over from there. It's difficult. That's why you're prone to accidents and all that. So that's something that needs to be considered. I would estimate you're looking at about 600 trucks, double. The other issue I have of concern is security and safety. Well, was very well brought. I wholeheartedly disagree with some of the audience that said it's going to improve on security. Actually, it's going to be degradation on the security as a result of this construction. And the other issue I want to bring up is crowding. The other issue, I personally think construction of this property will have negatively impact my property. So unless I have, obviously we're debating this, but based on my experience living in that area, any additional traffic, any additional reduction in security, any additional stress on the utilities will reduce the price of my property. Members of the Commission, the slope ordinances is against that ordinance. I don't know why would you go step over boundary and allow this construction to happen and allow this override the slope.
Mr. Manassian, would you close your comments, please?
I want to thank you very much for your listening. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Eileen Manassian. All right. Thank you. Tanya Mata and Nalish Desai. Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Tanya Mata. My husband and I are the owners of the property at 140 Aspen Oak Lane in Glendale 91207. Good evening, Commissioner and members of the Commissioners, and I appreciate your time. I was here at the last meeting. I'm going to try not to repeat myself. I very, very much oppose this project. One of the houses is going to be right across from my home. Number one is privacy. Our house is all glass windows, and it will be facing the homes that are going to be constructed. We will lose a lot of our privacy. Number two is theft. My garage was broken into, and my car was stolen. All our Christmas gifts were gone right before Christmas. And I believe having more construction and more workers on the street will increase theft, definitely. And the noise level will be very annoying because I do have a 3-year-old that is at home and naps during the day. It will affect his nap, definitely, because the noise level is right in front of my house. And the last thing is safety. My kids always play in the front yard. They ride their bicycles. It's a cul-de-sac. Therefore, there's always very, very little traffic on our street. And due to the construction, we're going to have a lot of heavy traffic, and it's not going to be safety. I have tried renting a tent for like birthday parties, and every time they come up to our house, they say we cannot deliver the tent because the street is too narrow. To get up to Aspen Oak Lane, you have to go through very narrow streets. If you have the chance, I would recommend you to go see how narrow Nolan is. The corner of Nolan and Megan Place is extremely narrow, and there's a lot of cars that park there, and it's almost impossible for a big truck. Even a small truck would have a hard time getting through. I really appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Desai.
Madam Chairman and Planning Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to talk in front of you. And if I run over time, my wife has given her permission to use her time. And this is the first time she has given me that permission. Okay, I'm a resident of 132 Aspen Oak Lane, and I've been living there since 1984. I'm an internist, and I practice internal medicine in Burbank, California, and I'm on staff at Providence St. Joseph Medical Center. And I have brought some articles for all of you, the health hazards of digging on a hillside.
Pratt. Thank you, sir.
Too late.
I would like to draw your attention to numero uno later 1 on this article. Exposure to particulate air pollution and cognitive decline in older women. I won't bore you with the detail of the study, but this comes from a very prestigious institute, Rush Institute for Healthy Aging, Medical School Center, Chicago, Illinois, Department of Environmental Health, also from School of Public Health, Boston, Massachusetts, from Harvard. In the conclusion of this study is long-term and short-term exposure or particulate matters 2.5 to 10 at a level typically experienced by many individuals in the United States is associated with significant worse cognitive declining in older women. If you look at the page 219, the paragraph 3, exposure to environmental toxins are potential risk factors that can be modified among the most pervasive environmental toxins, in particularly air pollution. Extensive toxicological and epidemiological research has documented the relations of exposure to ambient particle with mortality and adverse respiratory and cardiovascular outcomes. Now, if you go to page 223, and I have highlighted for you, the results from animal studies indicate that the PM may access the brain either via circulation or intranasally by direct translocation through the olfactory bulb. Once the central nervous system fine particle appears to exert adverse effect, several animal studies have shown increased brain inflammation in response to air particulate exposure. In one experimental study, the ambient ultrafine particles of mixture of fine and ultrafine samples from Los Angeles, California, air 2 weeks after the exposure, the brain of the mice in both exposed group contained higher levels of inflammatory marker as compared with the mice in the control group. In dogs, the signs of blood-brain barrier dysfunctions, neurological degeneration, and cerebrovascular pathologic signs, and atopsis, which means the death of the brain cell and glial cells, were present more often than those who had lived in Mexico City. Mexico, an area of high air pollution, the dogs from the less polluted cities in a post-mortem study of 19 humans aged 34 to 83 years who had died of non-neurological causes, brain levels of the cyclooxygenase inflammatory mediator in the frontal cortex of the hippocampus were higher among those who had lived in the high polluted cities. Here we are talking about not digging a swimming pool, but moving a mountain and a truckload. This is going to affect not only people living on Aspen Oak, but all around that vicinity, depending on which way the wind is blowing. So let's be mindful of that. There will be higher incidence of Alzheimer's, CVAs, bronchial asthma, allergic rhinitis. The relationship to the PM exposure to cognitive decline may also be mediated through the cardiovascular mechanism. Extensive experimental and epidemiological data indicate that association between exposure to air pollution and cardiovascular risk factor is certain. Then I would like to draw your attention to letter 2, where it says ambient air pollution and a risk of acute ischemic stroke. This is a study also again by a prestigious university, and I will read the conclusion on page 1. The results suggest...
Page number? You have a page number?
Yes, the page number is 229.
And these are, by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt. These are studies done for hillside development?
These are studies for air. No, these are not just the hillside. These are the general air pollutions. And the particulate matter in the air.
Dr. Desai, I did give you your wife's 3 minutes, so you do need to wrap it up in about 30 seconds.
All right. When we bought this house, we were told the development will be only on the one side of the street. The hillside was planted, seeded with sprinkler system for everybody to enjoy. And the city also, at that time, mandated that some of the lots will be given to the park and recreation to develop a tennis court and a common area on the top of the hill, which never materialized. But we were assured that there will be no houses coming on the other side of the street.
Who were you assured by?
The original developers were Ernest and Arbach, which went bankrupt, and they developed all the lots. The maximum lots they were allowed at that time were already developed. If they were given permission to develop more, they would have developed more lots then. Why now one single house is asking to extend and develop 2 more lots in the property? Tomorrow somebody from another area will come and say, we want to develop in our backyard and have a new road built on Aspen Oak to access that.
Any other questions for Dr. Desai?
Nothing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your educating us on that.
Thank you.
Dr. Steve Gupta, followed by Stephen Isaac-Denian. Eskandarian. Thank you. I think that's the second time I've murdered it.
Good evening. I'm Steve Gupta. I'm an allergy specialist, and I have office at 800 South Central Avenue. I specialize in allergy and asthma, and I'm very much against this project, mainly because of the dust that it will create and spread all over. I see patients with allergies, asthma, sinus problem, cough, postnasal drip, and they always complain worsening of symptoms when there's construction in the neighborhood. This is a major construction in an already populated area. The contractor always say we try to minimize the dust, but you just have to drive behind a truck which is carrying the dust to see how much of the dust is spilling over. As we see, all these dust trucks have no cover. They are spilling dust as they go all the way up and down. So I'm strongly opposed to this because it's really a health risk to the people living in the neighborhood. I think if the project is carried out, it should have given a small amount of time, maybe a week or 2 weeks, to do all the excavation so at least the small children in the neighborhood can move away from that area during that time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You will get more customers.
Steve Eskandarian.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Iskandarian. I own and operate Zantu Chicken. Me and my family own 2 businesses in Glendale. One we've owned over 20 years. I've lived on Aspen Oak Lane over 20 years. We've owned 2 homes there, one of which I sold to my neighbors. I wish I still owned it, but I don't. Frankly, I am a fair man. I'd like to believe that I am. I'm in the food business. It's the hardest business to be in. It really is. I found myself in New York, in Hyde Park last week, overlooking the grave of one of our greatest presidents, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and I paid my respects to the man. And I asked you today, what would he do in this situation? He would let us vote. This is our block. This is our home. He lives on another block. What is fair? What is right? What makes this country great? If you let this thing pass, you will make a big mistake. You will harmfully affect all these successful citizens of Glendale that work so hard, that have so many lives depending on them. I have over 150 employees. And I say I'm fair. You know, I've helped start a church. We feed homeless people every week. I've spent over $10,000 putting alcoholics in rehab. If I felt that stopping this project would negatively harm Mr. Boniati, I wouldn't be here. He's a successful man. If this thing doesn't go, he will continue to be successful. He will find another home to build somewhere else. This is not a piece of land sitting by itself somewhere, waiting to be developed. This is land that hasn't been developed for so long. And there are no other homes across the street. This is different than any other development that is happened in Glendale. And I'd like to say that I am frankly offended, deeply offended, in the manner in which Mr. Boniati has proceeded. The letters he sent were very misleading to neighbors trying to get signatures. I would like to ask him how he went about getting those signatures. He has a whole army of people here in support of him. And I know to be a real estate agent and be successful, you need to have a few things. One, you need to be savvy, clever, sharp. You need to be generous when you need to be, and not when you don't. So, I see what is happening here. I sit there and I look amongst your faces, some of whom I say are being honest, and I have to say that it's a small community of real estate agents. Everyone knows everyone. So I'm going to second what my fellow citizen said. Okay? I'm not stupid. I'm sitting here, and a few things, I don't like what I see.
Could I ask you to please wrap up?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. No clapping, thank you. Please, we try to respect everyone here. Thank you very much. Stephen, can you read his handwriting?
Martirosyan.
Martirosyan. Thank you. All right, so you've already spoken. And Dinah Karapetian.
Good evening. I live on 166 Aspen Oak Lane over 10 years, and also I would like to talk behalf of my parents who live on 170 Aspen Oak Lane right next door, and they've been living there for 25 years. Sir and ma'am, you know, I would like to ask you, if you've never been in that neighborhood, you can come and check it out and see what it looks like and what they're trying to do to it. It's not a regular vacant lot that they're trying to make nice. It's already nice and wild. It has deers. It's the only nice wild place left in Glendale, and I am hoping that it won't be touched. But the main reason that we moved to that area, because when my parents got the house, they were told that there is no more zoning and there won't be no construction. And my son has an allergy. So we decided that's the most clear, nice air place that we can be, and we can be next to my parents. Right now, this construction really bothers me, especially right now when I heard that such a danger will be caused by it for my kids. I'm really nervous, and please, before you allow this, try to look into very details. And like my neighbor said, we can collect lots of signatures that saying they're against it, because already Glendale, especially that hill, is overcrowded. Please, if you can come and look at it and put yourselves in our shoes, you can decide what to do too.
Before you leave, would you state your name for the record, please?
Diana Karapetian, and I live on 166 Aspen Oak Lane. My parents, Ruben and Alice Gaganian, who live on 170 Aspen Oak Lane, over 25 years now.
Thank you very much. I have no more cards, speaker cards, so I'm going to ask the applicant to come forward, and they have 15 minutes for rebuttal.
Madam Chair, before you proceed, may I ask a question to the city attorney?
Sure, you may.
City attorney, last hearing, I was not here, and apparently, during this hearing process, I'm hearing that some of the people were here and testified, and this was continued today. Am I allowed to sit here? Am I qualified to make a decision on this case when I was not here to listen to other testimonies?
Yes, Commissioner Lee, I believe that you are, because there has been no restrictions on comments that were made at the last hearing, and comments were renewed again today, and the applicant has been given a full opportunity to present his case and also for rebuttal, so there's no issue there.
Thank you.
If I could add to that, please. My recollection is that, and I could be wrong, but I thought that we had decided, because everybody wasn't here, that it really wasn't a hearing. It was, we allowed the participants, because they came in such a large amount, to speak their comments. So I don't know if that's correct, and I thought that just might add to what we're discussing right now.
I believe you did open the hearing when you did take the comments, and you continued it as an open hearing.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
May I ask for a recess?
Uh,
My bladder is...
We will have a recess for 10 minutes.
recess. So many things.
All right, we are back in session, and we recessed just as the applicant was going to take their 15 minutes for rebuttal.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Before applicant takes the rebuttal, I'd like to pose a question to the staff, and maybe applicant has a chance to answer during his rebuttal.
Commissioner Lee.
The drawings that was provided to us by ABK Engineering, which is stamped by the civil engineer, has 48% average slope on there. Has our overall, yes, has the staff verified that number, or do we take it just for the face value?
We're taking it at face value.
Okay, so when is that close? Is cutoff
close to
50%? I think is when we require variance steps and so on.
Because it's a parcel map process, the CUP requirement, if that's what you're referring to,
Right.
is not. It's wrapped into this process already. It's not a separate review. So it's not like a trigger point per se. The trigger points that have already been included in this process are that you're over 30%, you've got to have a certain average or a certain lot area which they comply with. You know, that's the average 30,000 square feet.
So that once we approve this parcel map process here, they do not have to come back for CUP hearing?
That's correct.
But then, you know, I'll feel more comfortable if we can verify the number of the 48%, because I think it's very close to that, the trigger point.
I'd like to bring up the point that the grading plan is required by code for a parcel map to be at 2-foot intervals on a flat area, and they're 5-foot here, some 2-foot intervals. At 1 to 100, it's at 1 to 30, which is more intense than 1 to 100. I did ask staff to verify what each lot's average slope was, and Brad, would you please go back and give us what Lot 2 and Lot 3's average slope is?
The average current slope for the lots, and this is before grading, for Lot 2 is 50.3% and 55.6% for Lot 3. Maybe that answers your question, Mr.
Yes, it does.
Are there any other questions for staff before we ask the applicant to come forward? All right.
So, but, Madam Chair, I do have a comment to make, if
please do,
you would indulge me. And this is after I consulted with the city attorney. First and foremost, I have to appreciate, I think it was Mr. Ilingesian. If I mispronounce your name, I apologize. And then, of course, being confirmed by Mr. Iskandarian, there was a reference to somebody on this dais to watch of conflict of interest. Now, because the conversation led to real estate, clever and perceptive people in that may we find amongst realtors, not all of them, some of them. I have to tell you, and I spoke about this to the attorney, city attorney, whether or not the fact of the matter that I've served on the Glendale Board of Realtors, that Mr. Bunyadi has served on the Glendale Board of Realtors, whether or not that puts me in a conflict of interest. The answer was no. And then I went further, and I am, this is for your edification, sir, and yours. I went further, and I had made a deal with an agent of Mr. Bunyadi. Okay? This was about 7 or 8 months ago. Does that put me in a conflict of interest? The city attorney suggested no, because we're all independent agents. I have not had any dealings with Mr. Boniadi.
Have you had dinner with him?
Okay, no, I have not. So,
Okay, please.
but I didn't have to answer that to you. But I've eaten at your establishment quite a few times. Now, does that conflict me out from making a decision? No.
I don't know. You're
Wait, I'm sorry.
Please.
It isn't a conversation.
No, he's,
I know it seems
It's
that way,
rhetorical.
but I'm
It's
sorry,
rhetorical,
it's
Mr.
really
Scott.
not a conversation. My apologies.
please.
Third, my sister works for that firm as well as an independent agent, correct? Does that conflict me out? The answer is it doesn't, per the city attorney. I just wanted to put that out so I can answer your questions in the meantime to make the disclosures that are necessary so everybody on record knows what my background is and what do I do.
Your sister works for him, and that's not conflict.
Thank you.
Very much.
What a joke.
Thank you very much.
Please,
Your sister works
this
for
is.
him?
I'm
And
sorry.
That's not a conflict of interest?
Could you please leave? I'm sorry. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is.
We can continue, please.
Mr. Adamian, would you like to come forward, please?
Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry.
Leave now, or do you want us to get the police? We're done taking any more of your stuff. Well, we've already spoken. You've had your
Could we
talk.
please-
If you want to talk more, we'll get somebody to escort you out. We're done. Please let the hearing go on.
Mr. Adamian, please.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, I'll make a few comments, rebuttal comments, and Mr. Zorabian will follow me. First of all, the building meets all the zoning and is in compliance with all the zoning, or the proposed subdivision is in compliance with all the zoning and hillside ordinance. There was comments made about potential for landslide. I don't think they meant for this subject property, but some people are talking about landslides on their own properties. They've witnessed it a few years ago, etc. I just have to make that comment regarding this subject property. The soil and geology report did not identify any potential landslide. Furthermore, because we're going to have grading, retaining walls on caissons, and even an impact wall on Lot 2, it minimizes, if there was any potential, whatever very small risk, it further minimizes that, reduces that. Regarding, as far as moving soil from the property, the trucks will be coming up empty and going down with the soil during the earth removal process, but I let Mr. Zorabian to make some additional comments.
Could you hold on 1 second? Commissioner Lee has a question.
You mentioned soils report in your rebuttal. Do you have a copy of that for us too?
That has been submitted as part of the record for the soil report to engineering department.
So, can you verify his comment, please?
Yes, Commissioner Lee. I have a copy of a soils report dated July 19, 2011 by the Bayer Geotechnical Group. And in that report stated that there was a previous report on October 19, 2010, where the geotechnical company did an investigation in accordance with the California Geological Survey requirements, and they found that the parcel C is not susceptible to landslide during a seismic event. However, if the project moves forward, we are going to require another geotechnical and soils report that will entail field investigation, exploration, hand digging of test pits, and laboratory testing to ensure that the stability of the slope is intact.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question too, but Mr. Hussein, go ahead first.
Can you verify that the architect had said something earlier about a requirement of 15 feet behind the backyard area where the retaining wall is and actually where the house is. Is that actually true?
Commissioner Yesayan, that's outside my area of responsibility and authority, but I do believe it is true. There is some kind of, I'm not sure about the 15 feet, but there is a setback requirement from the total slope to the rear of the residence or the structure.
So wouldn't that sort of go against our own hillside design guidelines, which says, I mean, I'm going to read it, use of retaining walls to create backyards and hillside areas is not appropriate? How does that, how do you evaluate those things?
It depends on as far as putting in a backyard and what the actual setback and the height of the walls, that depends on the type of the structure that is being proposed. We do have examples, plenty of examples in Glendale of buildings that are built into the hill where you don't necessarily have to have that much setback. So it really depends on the design. I can't speak to the exact design that's here, but I know they do vary, and we have had projects where we've asked them to redesign it in order to eliminate or reduce the rear walls where 15 feet perhaps weren't acceptable. So again, it varies a little bit. The requirement that we have in our subdivision ordinance is that the applicant show a buildable pad. And so that's what he's attempting to do, is show a pad area that could be built on. The reason for that is to prove that you can have once you subdivide it, you can actually build a building that meets our code. And so this site itself may not exactly be ultimately exactly as it's shown here, but the idea is they could build a pad that would match the code in that general location. Now, whether or not the wall needs to be 5 feet or 15 feet, or can they adjust it a bit, a lot of that's going to depend on ultimately the design that goes to design review board. But that you do have a control in terms of where the property lines would be and the driveway locations.
I do have one more question. This might be
Sure. Go ahead, Commissioner.
yeah, I have a question to the engineer. This may be a silly question, but when we do a massive cut, and then we also have a fill that is over 800 cubic yard, can those soils that's been excavated be reused for the fill, thus reducing number of trucks that's going up and down the hill?
Commissioner Lee, in some instances that is possible, and that is preferred that we have a balanced grading on the site. But in this case, because of the steepness of the slope surrounding the site, that's not possible.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask the city engineer one more question. The soils report indicates that this is predominantly bedrock. Am I correct? At least that's what it visibly looks like, so that's why I'm asking for scientific confirmation.
Madam Chair, I can only confirm what the report says, and that's accurate.
Okay. My second question is typically in bedrock, is there ever any blasting done, or is it all drilling and on a slope of this severity? Would that constructability have any blasting, or would it all, what would be the methods of construction, and what would?
Madam Chair, within the city of Glendale, we do not allow blasting. It's primarily by drilling for soldier piles.
All right, thank you very much.
I will just make one quick comment regarding that 15-feet setback that Commissioner Yesayan mentioned. That's also a geologist, soil engineer's requirement. They prefer 15-foot setback, so, I mean...
From the toe of the...
From the toe, yes.
So, and how far is the building from the backyard retaining wall?
15
is it 15 feet or
15
is it more?
15 feet. And we're meeting the soil engineer's requirement, specific requirement.
Yes.
Since you're up here, I'd like to address one of the things that is not mentioned in the condition, but I'm wondering if you are open to this type of suggestions, and that is a lot of the neighbors' concern is that, obviously the particulates in the air, the dirt that's going to be on the street and all that. If there's a condition that's imposed to provide street cleaning service, several times a day to make sure that you wet the road down, clean the road, so that they have a clean road to come home to. Is that something you're open to providing?
Commissioner Lee, the City of Glendale has very specific requirements, and also mentioned in the conditions how to mitigate the impact of dust during the construction. And as far as AQMD goes, they have also identified that there is no significant impact, although it's been mentioned. So would that requirement be applied to all new construction in the City of Glendale that they clean? So I don't see that condition to be too onerous. I mean, just to be honest with you, it's not too ominous, that condition. So on the face of it, I don't have personally any comment against it, but I would like to confer with my colleagues and respond at the end when somebody else will step forward, and I'll come back and answer your question if you don't mind. And
I guess another question might be that I know there's directions in the from our city to make sure that you have people during construction period to provide flagmen and the caution flags, the signs. I drove up and down that hill, and there's a lot of hairpin turns there, and it's a very narrow street. So if there's a more stringent requirement that we'll ask as a condition, that might be something that you also need to speak to to your client about.
I can add that, yes, there are going to be flag persons during the construction, as that's part of the condition, and also generally required by City of Glendale on construction, not only in this particular case. There'll be staging area on Mountain or Pacific, etc. Trucks are going to come up empty, the ones that are moving earth. During the course of construction, obviously, trucks are going to bring material, but that's not as frequent. But I don't see your suggestion too ominous.
And I know that Commissioner Yasan mentioned this about the operation hours of dump trucks coming up, and I know some of the neighbors also had concerns about that. Is that something, I don't know, maybe I'll ask City Attorney too, is that something that we can impose of hours of truck that's coming up?
Commissioner Lee, our noise ordinance dictates starting construction no earlier than 7 a.m.
I understand that, but given the like say morning traffic of maybe families taking kids to school and so on, for that time to be at, let's say, 10 o'clock.
What discretion does the commission have is the question.
And then to avoid also, the coming home time in the evening around 6. So to avoid those things, so then you have a shortened period of time where you can have the dump truck. So it may elongate the construction period, but still avoid those critical times.
The commission is free to impose condition, but the ordinance does set it at 7 o'clock in the morning, and whether those conditions will be accepted or not.
But it is our purview to.
Could you all hear that?
Madam Chair, shortening the hours will prolong the amount of dust. So, I mean, there's a trade-off there. If they start 7, people take their children to schools normally after 7 a.m. It's preferable. But it'll be Mr. Zorabian is going to comment on the trucks and the size of the trucks and etc. But I want to say that is you want to minimize the number of days that the earth moving activity will happen. That's I want to make that comment. But I'll let Mr. Zorabian to come forward and continue, and then I'll be ready to answer further questions.
Mr. Zorabian.
For the record, my name is Hamlet Zorabian. I'm the project architect, 3467 Ocean View Boulevard, Suite B, Glendale 91208. As far as shortening the hours of operation, I think it's possible. I don't see any wrong with it. And obviously, Mr. Demian was saying very logical. He was making a very logical statement. However, I don't think the difference would be that much. I think if the residents are not, they're more comfortable that way, and to accommodate their issues, if we start, moving the trucks, and the only thing is that I'm not sure that are you referring to those periods of that excavation where that's done, or generally with the construction? Because normally the shortening the span of, duration of the construction, it would actually prolong the overall construction, which I'm sure that even though, my client wants to just do it very quickly, and after the construction, they'll just leave quickly.
I was referring to grading.
Grading,
duration.
yes. I think I spoke to, I had the liberty to talk to my client a few minutes ago.
Well, one of my concern might be is that, you might have trucks that come up, but most of the dump trucks that I've seen, they actually tailgate and wait to get loaded. So in a small street, where you do not have a straight, road for, certain amount of, length there.
Yes.
If you have a 2, 3, 4 dump trucks line up there, you have a traffic jam there.
Yeah, I think that's why Mr. Demian was referring to staging area. What that was, it would be outside of that community that would be staging up. So it would be like maybe 3 trucks waiting outside, and if the condition is that at any given time you should not have 2 trucks over there, that is a condition. It's your prerogative to do that, and we should be okay. We will accommodate these concerns just because of our neighbors. We just don't want to create, obviously, any discomfort for them. The only thing is that the time, if I may please, it's duration and everything, it's your prerogative. If you see it necessary, we will adhere to that. We don't have any problem. Did I answer the question, or
yes.
Commissioner? Okay, so the only thing that I want to just briefly mention is the amount of grading and the truck size and so on and so forth. I myself, not only architect, but my company is a design-build company. We also design and build. Not necessarily that we're going to be the construction, a company here. However, the thing is that I do have the experience of that. Now, the trucks that are going to be hauling, there's this straight truck, and then there's a truck that has a tail. So the truck that has a tail carries 14 cubic yards. The truck that is a straight truck, a standard truck, it will carry 12 cubic yards. So I did my own, just a very quick calculations, how many truck is going to take just to haul the soil, and then also cut and field balancing, and that would be up to the geologist what to recommend. And there is a provision for that as well, so as much as possible to minimize it, which that was one of your comments, which is completely true. Now, I've came up with using the 12 cubic yard trucks, it will translate into 97 trucks for one lot and 84 trucks for the other. So it is definitely less than 200 trucks. Now, how they're going to stage it? Obviously, as I said, if you want to put a sort of a condition that at given time 2 trucks will be there, the maximum, or you want to just condition it to 1 truck, all he's going to do is just going to prolong and kind of defer the movement of it. That's all it is. So there is a balance there. So I think that it's much safer if you feel that way to have only 2 trucks parking there, 1 waiting, 1 being loaded, and we will do that. I mean, we will have no problem as far as that's concerned.
Mr. Zorabian, the 12 cubic yard trucks, what is their wheelbase? It is very narrow, and there are a lot of narrow curves. Would
Yes.
they be able to manipulate?
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
The hillside?
well, first of all, the street that we are talking about, that we are in, is a standard street. The right-of-way it is classified as a standard. It's not a substandard street. You might imagine in different parts of the town, actually, when you go to Hollywood Hills, for instance, or you go to any other places, there are many roadways that are narrower than this, and you know it. I mean, they're building buildings on the slope. Obviously, their regulations are different from City of Glendale, and the way I see it, the City of Glendale has more stringent requirements for that. So the thing is that it's wide enough for that, unless people are constantly parking on the street or so on and so forth, which that should not be the case. So as far as width of it concerned, although the street is a cul-de-sac, it has a two-sided entrance.
Well, I'm actually more concerned about coming up from Mountain, up.
Yes.
Up Pacific, up. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Wait. Thank you, really. Yeah. I'm sorry. I really appreciate you helping me, but I need to keep order. Thank you. So I guess I'm more concerned about I'm looking at this upside down, some of the hairpin turns on Magin and at the corner of Nolan, and even,
yes.
I'm not talking about the width of Aspen Oak Lane. I'm just talking, and also there is parking on the street. So
yes.
when I'm just asking if the wheelbase of the 12 cubic yard
yes.
dump truck would be able to manage that.
Yes, it can. Actually, knowing this concern, I have spoken to a couple of other, general contractors, verify this thing. If it's a straight one, it is definitely, doable. And the thing is that when we're talking about standard street, the right-of-way and the turnaround and all of that, that is generally designed to accommodate a fire truck.
Correct.
So a fire truck is much larger size than a regular hauling truck. Yes. As long as you use a straight, and that's why, based on that, I calculated it. So it's, I think if we stay very objective to that, we can help each other to minimize the impact. And I think we should stay objective to this, and for both sides' sake. And also, I want to mention that as far as the dust control, as far as environmental impact, you have an attached negative declaration report that was done very thoroughly. All these items are there as far as the dust and noise, and none of them were found to be, yeah, they're all of them are less than significant or no significance at all. So clearly, we're not proposing to build a factory here. This is a residential neighborhood. All we are doing, we are building two houses in this neighborhood. And the impact of it, yes, during construction, you will have some impacts, but they're very standard. And City of Glendale and any other city will not, go without regulating these times and this during construction. All the impacts. So there are standard procedures already set in, which it will regulate all of the activities during construction.
Commissioner.
Yeah.
Yes.
When I mentioned about the flagmen, providing flagmen at the corners.
Yes.
I wasn't just talking about at the nearby the construction site. I'm talking about throughout the whole entire route there, where
yes.
there's a hairpin. You
yes, I
mentioned
agree.
that,
that is part of the
okay.
standard.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
And we did interact with you. So if you have any other rebuttal items that you would like to close with, please do.
Madam Chair, I just want to say that this hearing obviously is for imposing certain conditions for this project. We are not requesting any variance. We are not requesting anything over and above what the ordinance allows us to do. And the report speaks for itself. I've reviewed it, and there is no adverse effect to the environment in that area there. And our intention is to go on, optimize the design of the buildings as far as the colors, as far as the detailing of the house, and everything that the DRB would require us to do. And so at this time, I just respectfully ask that you would approve our project. And since we are not asking for any variance or anything that is over and above the ordinance. And that was what I was going to say and close, basically. If you have any questions, So you can still ask. I'm available.
Are there any other questions from
Any questions?
the commissioners? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it very much.
I am now closing the public portion of the hearing and comment, and we will discuss the commissioners among themselves. Mr. Sheets.
Oh, well, what if we still have questions for the staff?
Yeah.
We can still have questions for the staff.
So my question for the staff would be, I need more clarity regarding the percent slope issue.
I think all of us do.
I'm not,
Yeah.
it's close enough for me that I need to understand what that means. Can we validate, can we verify, and get some clarity around that? I think it's significant enough that we need to understand that clearly and what boundaries we have relative to this process.
Commissioner Sheets, members of the commission, Mr. Collin explained what the significant slope percentage is with regard to the parcel map process. The 50% really has no bearing. It's the 30% that kicks in the average 30,000 square foot lot area per lot. So there's no 48% or whatever it is isn't near any cutoff point for a parcel map application in the R1R zone.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Lee.
I guess that's the part that because we've been sitting back here going over certain case hearings about CUPs that pertains to slope being over 50%. And here's another set of rules that once this is approved, that doesn't kick in. So I am, educate me, please. I'm a little bit confused. Why do we have two set of rules here?
Well, it's apples and oranges. The conditional use permit process was designed for existing lots prior to the significant changes to hillside development rules in 1993. All these numbers are arbitrary, of course. There's nothing magic about 50% as opposed to 45% or 48%, just like 30%. The idea was from now on being 93 on, that you, whether it was whoever the decision maker was on a parcel map, would have the opportunity to decide whether the new parcels were meeting all the criteria that we wanted so that you could have development that would fit in sensitively into the hillsides. So again, the arbitrary 30% was the cutoff point to determine a certain steepness where we had to worry about larger lots. It was the 30,000 square foot average is pretty large. The rock bottom minimum in the R1R zone is 12,000, so why would you have a 30,000 square foot average if your minimum is 12,000? Or on a parcel map, your minimum is also the neighborhood average that Brad mentioned within 500 feet. There was sort of the unofficial slogan was sort of cluster, don't cram. The community felt that we didn't want to have a series of just minimum 12,000 square foot lots like in the old days. We wanted to change, have more open space. And so with parcel maps being generally infill type development where you're for the most part surrounded by developed lots or maybe even dividing a larger developed lot like this one, that the threshold should be very high. Now in the ROS zone, it's the same slope density formula as the conventional tentative tract map. So in that case, the average current slope would, whatever it is, would be much more significant if this were the ROS zone, which it isn't. So even though there's very little difference between R1R and ROS being at the time, primarily undeveloped land, otherwise there's virtually no difference. But again, if this were ROS, we'd have to be very careful about what the average current slope was. But since this isn't close to the 30% cutoff point, whether it's 48 or 49 or 51, doesn't make much difference.
Mr. Krause, I have a couple of comments and conversations with you. One is, I understand what you have said. But in 1993, if this was one lot or two lots, it would have been considered, if it's one lot, it's considered infill. It's also a site that might have been considered ROS if it was going to be assumed it was going to be subdivided, but it wasn't, so it's now R1R. There are a lot of, fortuitous things that happen to make this R1R. It's certainly steep enough to be ROS, and it has all of the open space requirements that would have made it qualify for the ROS, but it's R1R. And also in 1993, we in the city decided that steep slopes that exceed 50% needed a conditional use permit, and those conditions need to be made. And now in a parcel map, typically a parcel map is much larger than 3 parcels. So this is a unique parcel map. All of these situations are very unique, and we don't typically deal with parcel maps, and if we do, we deal with a much larger property and smaller parcels. So what I'm saying is, despite all of the regulatory requirements here, I think some of the conditions here make us question following the path that is just typically saying this meets all of the intent of the code. I think the code's intentions are broader than what these 2 parcels create.
Well, again, Chairman Landrigan, this is a discretionary decision, and that allows you to condition, or approve, not approve, or condition to make the development fit into the neighborhood. So even though we have very minimal starter pad sizes, if you thought larger pads were appropriate to fit into this neighborhood, you could put that condition on, just like anything else. You could ask for more as long as you thought it was something that was reasonable to have this subdivision fit into the existing pattern of development, into the existing neighborhood. That's kind of what all these rules related to, whether it's design review or zoning or subdivision, they're all designed to help you make a decision to create something that fits into the neighborhood. Or if you don't think it does, you're not obligated to approve it.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, staff? Mr. Hussein.
Yeah, one of the requirements of the Hillside Design Guidelines is asking for alternatives that have been reviewed and deemed infeasible for the site. What kinds of alternatives have you guys looked at as you've been reviewing this with the applicant?
Question?
What kinds of alternatives have you looked at for the site that have been deemed to be infeasible, since that's one of the requirements of the design guidelines? Notes that alternative designs for street access have been evaluated and examined and have been determined to be infeasible. So I'm just, what sorts of alternatives have you guys looked at to make sure that this is sort of an ideal proposed layout for this type of property?
Commissioner Usain, you may want to direct that to the applicant. Staff reacts to projects that were given for review. We don't actually create the projects. So if the applicant has looked at other alternatives, you may wish to ask that question of him.
Would you like to do that?
Yeah.
You may want to reopen the hearing to take new testimony.
I'm going to open the...
If you guys
you can
are
come
okay
up
with that.
here.
If you guys...
We're going to reopen the public portion of the hearing for questions from the commission.
Okay.
Would you like to phrase
for the record, again, shall I state my name for the record?
Yes,
Or-
please do.
Hamlet Zorabian. So I'm the project architect, 3467 Ocean View Boulevard, Suite B, Glendale, 91208. Yes, sir. The question?
Yeah, what are the other alternatives that you guys did look at? I know you did explain to me why
Yes.
you chose this. What were the other alternatives?
Yeah, the other alternatives that we looked at, I can give you an example of it because there's so many things in the during process of design we actually look at. In other words, the orientation of the house itself, where to put the garage, putting the garage, for instance, on this side or the other side. Obviously, if you put the garage on the left-hand side as an example, and what it does, it yields a much steeper access to the property. So that alternative was not viable. So this particular project, which is the lot number 2, the only most logical way of accessing the property would be from the high point, where you would minimize grading that way, because it would yield a smaller pad for you there. Now, an example, a good example of that, is what we submitted from the very beginning to planning, and that was the reason that we went back and forth, we worked together. What we submitted for lot 3 had the garage underneath the house. So that proved to yield taller retaining walls in the front of the building. So when they looked at it as an example, they went. We have gone through a very vigorous exercise as far as that's concerned. So we had to redesign the driveway, relocate the parking area. So it proved to us that on this stretch of the street, the most logical way of entering the site would be on a higher point of the lot, if you will. So that yields the least amount of retaining wall. So that was the exercise as an example for you that we've done. Actually, that particular model that you see there, we had to revamp the entire model in the first go-around. And this was a massing model that we did afterwards. So that sort of exercise with the planning staff, we have gone through it.
Okay. Thanks.
Mr. Zorabian, site planning looks at a site.
Yes.
And you have one long site, and it's fairly steep in certain areas and less steep in others. And site planning is what you ended up having to do before you decided to divide the parcels. Now, you can look at the site and you can say, this is what the code will allow me to do. I have so much square footage, I have 30,000 lot, I can make that work, and I will design the site that way regardless of the topography of the site. To me, that looks to me like how you designed the site. And you didn't look at the site, and you didn't look at the topography of the site and what would be the best way to design it. Can you disabuse me of that notion?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, we take pride in how we design our site, first of all. We always are very sensitive. We begin with contours, as I mentioned it before. And you would normally to make it very simple, when you're looking at a particular lot, you immediately have to find where is the less steep area to generate and actually put your pad. And the second thing is to create the access. So the way I have done this thing, the house itself is nestled, if you will, within the hillside itself. And I've seen designs that people will come and then do a huge pad and then they will just build on that a house. This is not that way. Within the building design of that you see here, the first floor is narrower than the top floor. So that means the portions that you're not able to see here, because as a matter of fact, we have not gone through the design review board where I would actually generate sections to explain. So within the house that you're seeing there, actually we have stepped back on the hillside, if you will. So we're not actually cutting the hillside straight down and then creating this house there. So what I'm saying is there's a lot more to it than it looks. And by the time that we are introducing our materials, it will be very compatible, and it will be, kind of blending into the landscaping. And by the time we have our landscaping there, which we try to basically, show on our plan conceptually, you're not going to be able to see the house in a standing way. We could have come back here and then we say, okay, we're allowed to have a certain height, and let's minimize the floor-to-floor height and then go 3 stories. That's not what we've done. That was not the procedure that we've taken. So I'm very confident. I'm seriously confident, unless you have a specific objection and you can prove to me that I should have taken this house and I put it on top, where in that case I couldn't have accessed it this way. And if I had the choice to put it on the left-hand side, I would have accessed it better. It just doesn't work that way. And then I had to meander and then go all around. My easements, I had to consider the slope, I have to consider the point of view, I have to consider the view, I had to consider the other driveways that are across the street. There's so many things comes into site planning. So I am very confident that what the location, the access that we provide, this is the best solution. And I can bank on that.
Did you said you considered the driveways across the street. Did you consider the houses across the street?
Yes, yes. I have a drawing that shows all the houses there. I have a section that we have drawn from each house, going through the houses that are across from it, taking a profile all the way down.
Okay.
And I have tried to minimize the security issues. I have to minimize the impact as far as the views, and all of that has been taken care of on this. And otherwise, I'm proven wrong. Otherwise, I've taken pride in designing these two houses. I think they're going to be beautiful houses. And then obviously we have to optimize the design concept, and as far as detailing of it, colors, materials, and even the shape of it, it's going to go through the design review board still. So they're going to. I'm sure that neighbors are going to have another chance of, participating in those meetings as well.
All right. Thank you. Any questions?
Well, I guess my main concern is probably, I think it's lot 3. It's this one right here.
This one is 3, yes.
And it's more so than the other one.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be massing. It seems to be much more massing to the front, and it doesn't go as well with the topography as number 1 or 2 goes. Sort of doesn't have any setbacks for the second floor. Lot 2 does have a little bit, but from the looking at it from the side, it just comes up. It's like a.
Yes.
I mean, it's like a vertical thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no. When you look at it, I mean, my concern is that it's just straight. Doesn't really merge into the topography as required by the hillside design guidelines, and that's primarily my concern.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is very hard to depict a contemporary or modern design in two-dimensional, because you're dealing with surfaces that they come in different angles. You're dealing with different materials that they come together and then they coincide with each other. It would have been very nice to see this thing in a 3D, but this is not the platform for it. In Design Review Board, however, we're required to have renderings. We're required to show 3D models of how everything, one after another is built together. And again, like I said, when Mr. Damian was mentioning, is just exactly that, because this design will go through optimization. And if we have to set back the second floor, let's say if we're required to set back further 5 feet, we will do it. This is not like setting concrete. This just basically is a very schematic design showing that we are attempting and complying. In compliance with the hillside also is the landscaping, is the massing of it, the access of it, all this that we talked about is there. Now, that one of the issues that you're talking about, I'm sure we're going to have to discuss it in the RB, and we will go for it.
Now, I mean, what we select is going to be more or less the site. So all of that yes. stuff that you said, it would be very helpful to have here. Mm-hmm. I know the Design Review Board goes into particulars, but our job, because it's a hillside, mm-hmm. you have very little room as far as the flexibility you have after we give you approval. Mm-hmm. So it's why it's really, I know it's a design thing, and I know there's a Design Review Board, but it's really particular how we get presented our information, because it'll allow us to make the decision with a lot more information and know that it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Like the only thing I can comment is that, for instance, if your objection to Lot 2, the way it's depicted as far as the building is concerned, Lot 3, I'm sorry, that you were saying it seems kind of two-story in front and it's not set back. If we were to, let's say, set back the second floor, the house design would work the same way.
It
would
wouldn't
not.
what?
The house design would work, and the site will not be changed. So in other words, we're going to be keeping the site and the pad constant, and that's part of the approval that we're receiving. If this is approved, whatever we design has to be not the house itself, but the subdivision and dimensions of the lot needs to be substantial in compliance of what we have presented here. Now, as far as the house is designed, Design Review Board, when we go through the process, they're going to have an impact on the size and massing of it. So that means right now, let's say I'm proposing to have 4,000 square feet house, but when you're going through the Design Review Board, it might decrease to 3,000 square feet, just to give you what that exact point that you were giving. That is why everything is systematically set. We're going. This is just very, very similar to CUP. CUP is conditional use permit. That means.
Right, we know that.
Yeah. So I'm for the sake of public and what I want to say. So.
Well, you're really here just to answer our questions, not
Well, I'm
to
trying.
educate.
I'm trying. I'm sorry. So the thing is that because this is a conditional hearing, it's not a CUP, but the point is that you are putting condition. Once we go to Design Review Board, there thoroughly I have to answer all those, and then the size will be dictated there. That's what I'm trying to say. But
We have one more question
Yes.
for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sheets.
Well, and it's
Yes.
not directed at him. I guess as a point of clarity for my sake, knowing that it's going to go to Design Review Board, if I'm focusing on the map, the breaking of the lots, I'm not sure how far we need to go into the design knowing it's conceptual, because everything we decide now might be totally washed away at design review, and I mean
And if they have to come
significantly. So I don't want to misdirect the client and say, well, it's not going to fit here and it will there, and give our good judgment and good thoughts if it's not valid. And I don't mean valid like we're not right. It's more that I don't know that it's appropriate here. So that's kind of what my thought and my question about how far should we go into the design.
So do we have any more questions
But-
for?
Do you have a state?
Well, I would just say, site planning, as it relates to the subdivision, is absolutely under your purview.
Okay.
And to the extent that the applicant has provided you a model that shows a house to show what it could look like, you could take that under consideration. That's absolutely what it could look like. And I would assume that those are the locations where pads will be located. There may be minor modifications to the pad. For instance, you may see a reduction in the retaining wall. You may see a reduction in the size of the house, or perhaps even an increase in the size of the house, depending on the lot size. But those are the locations where a home could be located. Those are also the driveway locations, and those are also where the property lines are going to be. So in terms of overall site planning, if you think that there's a question of was the topo taken into consideration when they designed the lot lines, once you put a lot line in, you're putting the lot line in. It wouldn't change regardless of what DRB does.
Correct.
So I just wanted to clarify that point.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You have a question?
No, I
or-
don't have any further questions.
Thank you very much.
All right. I am closing the public comment period again. And commissioners, questions, comments?
We deliberating or
We're deliberating. Do you have more questions?
no more questions? Are you want me to go first?
I don't care. I'll go first if you want. You can go.
I'll go.
Go ahead.
Mr. Lee.
Because Glendale, is already developed community, and we often find ourselves wrestling with these issues because there is no place to build other than hillsides. The owner has right to build, and if it's allowed by the code ordinance to subdivide, then he has right to do that. And our job here is to interpret that, although there are some reservations that I have on this project. I have to adhere to, what the current ordinances are that will guide me to make this decision here. A lot of the concerns that the neighbors have, I think, could be addressed, in my opinion, with the additional conditions that we can put on there. And I think those were mentioned in our comments, especially the dump truck hours, reducing it down to like 10 to 4 or something like that. Maybe the mitigation of the dust. I think I heard it correct that the owner is willing to go extra mile to put cleaning service, additional cleaning service other than the city provides to mitigate that. As long as all these issues are addressed, I am inclining to approve this project.
But you would like to have additional conditions on the truck hours and
Yes.
dust, particulate matter mitigation?
Yes.
Mr. Sheets.
Okay. It always comes down to what our purview is relative to what we can do and what we can make a decision on. I can tell you that I'll start out by saying I remember when these houses weren't here. I remember when these roads weren't here. But the roads are here now and the houses are here now. All of the items that I heard relative to concerns around the health and the noise and the dirt are items that are mitigated on sites much larger than this site every day. If the people that complained before these houses were built years ago got their way, you wouldn't have a house, you guys wouldn't have houses there. As far as the trucks and the particulate, there are significant ways to cover the truck and dust control that can be done that is not unknown and unheard of and would be something that the contractor could deal with. Although I don't totally agree, and probably part of that is my understanding of the process around the slope. If I was going to question this around anything, it would be around the slope. But if I put that together with all of the factors about what we can do and what the request is and what their rights are, everything's leading me towards the fact that they have a legal right to build, to subdivide these lots and continue their project. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner Sheets. Commissioners?
I think we do have a right to subdivide, especially for somebody who wants to build. While I hate hillside development in general, we have approved them before, and it's our job, I think, to make sure that type of sites that are picked are done thoughtfully and that take into a lot of consideration to the existing landscaping and the topography and the designs, because the type of site that they do pick does affect the design of the properties that you do have. It's not like a flat lot where we can think that you can rely on another board to make adjustments to it, because some of those adjustments might affect the actual site of it. So I think part of our job is to make sure, what we approve is to avoid any of that stuff. I do want to support it because it's within the property owner's right to subdivide a property. This particular property, he did, however, buy this as a single-family house. So there's that reason where it's not like an empty lot where he bought with the intention of subdividing it. He bought it as a single-family house, so I see that being that, you know, you buy it as a single-family house and your intention is to live there. The area is not really suitable for this subdividing it where other places might be. Just because it's a really unusual lot, I think gives it sort of an exception. We've seen before us that lots have come where a subdivision has been asked for on a ridgeline or secondary ridgeline, and we've gone sort of back and forth, and the end result that came before us was a much better site planned and ultimately a better project. But also, I mean, there are really hard considerations for this lot as well, since it is, you know, it has an exceptional amount of slope. So it would be sort of difficult for me to see how Lot 2, at least Lot 2, you could make other sort of, well, at least Lot 2 and 3, I think it's sort of, I mean, the flexibility isn't that much on what you can actually build. And me not knowing too much about it, as far as all sorts of the alternatives that were done. I mean, it seems like some of the alternatives had been picked. And, I mean, there was some explanation on that. So I'm going to go for a very slow support for it, just because, you know, it is a huge lot, and he can subdivide it, given the type of given that our ordinance even allows it, and we can't block that. And I think there has been done enough due diligence as far as trying to find the alternatives. Could there have been a better outcome? Maybe. But I think as far as it coming before us, with what's presented, I'm going to go with I'll go for a yes, but just with the very slowly inclined yes. Thanks, that's it.
Chairman Landrigan, can
Yes.
I interrupt for just a minute based on the discussion? I just wanted to clarify something. I know staff is recommending approval, but in California there is no right to subdivide.
Correct.
Just want to make that clear. I know you're aware of that.
I'm aware of it. I hope now
I don't know if everyone
the rest
is.
of the commission is.
Right.
Thank you for clarifying
Welcome.
that, Mr. Kraus. Mr. Astorian?
Oh, I have no further comments.
Well, all right. I'm looking at this site, and I'm looking at this as a site planning issue, and I think that's what a parcel map is it takes a site, and it plans it, and it decides how the parcel should be done. And using the code as a site planning tool is irrespective of the topo, just saying that, you know, I have 90,000 square feet, and that means I can have 3 lots. What is the best way to do these lots? I would go about it a different way. I'd look at this site and I'd say, where would be the best place? If I want to do another house or 2 here, just because I can design it and do it, should I, is the question. And I drove up here, and I have to tell you, I looked at that slope, and I called the planning department and I said, how do you do average slope? Because that's a long slope. And I'm a landscape architect, so I had to pass a test that had me do grading and slope. So I did some cuts. And if you look at where the house is and you look and you just draw a straight line through it, that's an 83% slope there. Now that's not your average slope, but it's an 83% slope. That's a pretty steep slope. And even if you can put a house there, is it the right place to put a house on such a slope as that? That's the question I would ask as a site planner. And I think that, yes, you have the right to develop your property responsibly. I think there has to say the responsibly to it. And you have to look at the site, and the site has to speak to you. And the way this is designed seems to me to optimize it economically and not topographically, and also not with the neighborhood or in the intent of the hillside ordinance. The concern I have is when you come up with a parcel map, it now supersedes any conditional use permit, so that the majority of the rights that we are going to give to anyone who divides, they go with the land, so they don't have to come back because there's a 50 or 55% slope there and get a conditional use permit. And that is the beauty of going through a parcel map, and it's to the advantage of the person who's putting a lot of money into doing this to make sure that what they've done, they've addressed all the issues. But to me, that means that the slope percentage still has to be considered, because that's why we have the hillside ordinance, because we wanted to have responsible hillside development. And I have a very hard time with Lot 3. I don't think it's a site that should have a building on it. I think that, to me, I don't know why it has to. Once you put the lot lines in, and they're all even, that's great if this was a flat lot, but this isn't a flat lot. To me, I don't see the real sensitivity of it being a hillside development in the proposal in front of me. I have a problem with it.
Well, could we just approve one of the lots and not the other one? Is that a possibility as well? Because, I do have a lot of problems with Lot 3. That was my main concern as well. I would be more okay with Lot 2.
That's a good question.
Yeah, in the commissioners, in the subdivision process, you're entitled to do that. You just have to justify it. That's all. In terms of you're saying perhaps that the site is not suitable for the proposed density of development. That's sort of one of the findings for a denial, but basically it's the same rationale for not approving it. So you could deny it based on the fact that you don't think 3 lots are appropriate, or you can try and reduce the density, but that gets to be a little trickier in terms of trying to justify it. In the decades gone by, that was a little easier to do. So it's not that you have the right to think 3 is too much, 2 is fine, but how do you get there? You're not looking at that right now, so you say come back and show me how that's going to work. You just say, well, don't do the westerly house and keep the property line separating the existing house from the new one where they've shown it, or something else. Again, you don't want to be in a position like most other projects where you're designing the project. So if you think that just cutting out the westerly house, well, you know what you're going to get with the other house, so that's not so bad. You're not really redesigning the project, but then how do you get there? And if the applicant isn't interested in that, then giving them that decision may not be useful to anyone either. So again, whenever you have a project that you have significant changes you'd like made, it's sometimes more difficult to approve it with conditions than to deny it and have them come back with a different project. So that's up to you.
Well, shall we have further discussion or a motion?
I apologize. I am inclined at this point that based on what we've heard and all the deliberation and all the input, that I would possibly suggest to not accept the proposal as presented. Now, as far as what I have to say or we have to say relative to what might be acceptable, that I'm not clear on. I think the testimony could give enough guidance and enough information that would say it's not acceptable for a number of reasons. But I've heard enough information and got enough input from my colleagues that I have some question, and I already had some concerns myself. So I know we can't make that into a motion, but I guess it shows my thinking as to what we can do. We can either totally reject it, or if somebody could formulate a statement that would present something that would be acceptable, eliminating what isn't, then I'd be willing to entertain that.
Commissioner Lee.
Yeah. I mean, all of us have same concerns with the steep slope, and the argument here that's been represented or presented here, it went into a little bit more into, I guess, are we able to put a pad there on a steep slope? I don't think any of really us are qualified to make that determination. Now, has there been enough convincing argument here that tells me, that there cannot be any, that Lot 3 cannot be developed? I am not convinced. So then, can we justify?
If it can't be developed, I'm sorry.
Well, what the argument right now is that yes, the Lot 3 slope is very steep, and argument is that probably is not suitable for development. In my in hearing that, and obviously we haven't really seen all the property reports that backs that up. And that's why one of the things that I asked the staff is that, have we verified all this, do we take it for the face value, what do we do, type of thing. But the presentation there, although it may be sticking out on that, but, in my own mind, is that area developable? And, my thought is yes. So I think we have to kind of grapple ourselves with that, is that, without going into design, without really designing the project for them, is there enough, argument out there for me to really deny them of or subdividing the lot to become a developer area? I'm sticking with my my decision.
Mr. Storian, do you have anything to say?
Well, I have no further comments.
What are you saying? Would you like to comment or make a motion?
No, I don't have any comments.
Okay.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
All right.
I move that upon consideration of a tentative parcel map number GLN 1628, and after reviewing the records, files, reports, and all documentary evidence submitted with regard to said tentative parcel map, the tentative parcel map number GLN 1628 is hereby approved, subject to compliance with the 24 conditions that actually make the 26 conditions listed below. And the Planning Commission hereby makes each and all of the following findings of the fact. And, it's through A through H and 1 through 24 with all the subsets, and plus the the hours of operation for dump truck during the grading operation to be from 10 to 4, and for the owner to provide additional street cleaning service at least one time a day during the entire grading operation.
May I have a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. May I have another motion? Unfortunately, we are here to make motions.
Do we have an option motion? I couldn't find it. But if you give me yours, I'll just restate it. See the opposing, so.
This one here?
Oh, that one.
Thank you very much.
Chairman Landrigan?
Yes.
If there's a desire to make a motion to perhaps deny the project, you may want to consider continuing the item with a denial and having staff write the findings and coming back to you with them. So if
We also
somebody-
have the option of asking to be continued to be addressing the fact that we have concerns with Lot 3. There are several options we
Absolutely.
have.
So we could continue it and then have them come back, though.
But we would want to give them direction. If we're going to
Direction, so-
continue it. We need to give them,
But they might actually prefer a denial so they can appeal to city council too, which,
they
you know,
might.
I would entertain that if they would rather do that.
Well, it's, what do we think is the right thing to do as opposed to
Do you
what
have
do we
another
think
option
the
other than
applicant
opposing it?
wants?
Well,
Do you have a motion?
continue or deny.
Is that a
Right.
motion?
Which one?
That's my
Well,
question.
that's our question.
Well, I mean, I think I would prefer to continue so we can see what the actual site ends up looking like.
So you would
We'll
like
make
to
that
make a
and let's see what
motion?
support there is.
You want to
Okay.
make a motion to continue?
Sure. So I move to continue the item.
To give them time to,
To give them time to come back with a redesign of Lot 3, a more appropriately designed property that fits the topography. Or no.
other-
consideration.
Or just a reparceling of the site that accommodates the topography?
Sure.
I mean,
Or
I'm not just-
nothing on, or the other option is just not put anything on Lot 3.
Can we get a
It's another
second?
option.
Can we get a second for,
All right, how would you, Ms. Stossler, would you read what you think the motion was?
I'm not sure.
Sorry.
A motion to continue the item to allow the applicant to either do a redesign of Lot 3, a reparceling that accommodates the topography, or some other option.
Sure.
All right, may I have a
But
second?
I would make a recommendation that you provide a date certain, so we have a date when the applicant needs to come back. Otherwise, we could have a project that just floats out there.
Shall we go to the first week of June?
that works for me. I don't know if it's an adequate time for
Does that give you time
June
to
6th.
respond to our request?
June 6th.
That would be June 6th?
Would that be
Or
acceptable to the applicant for a continuation to June 6th?
We can give you 2 months. 1 month is fine?
The applicant has stated 1 month is fine.
All right.
I second the motion.
All right, we have a motion. It has been second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Landrigan,
I go last.
Commissioner Schitz,
Aye.
Commissioner Lee.
So, I'm sorry, just for the clarification, so this is to revisit and look at the option on
For
Lot
them to
3.
bring us back an alternative.
Aye.
Commissioner Yasayan,
Aye.
Commissioner Astorian,
Abstain.
and Chairperson Landrigan.
Aye. The motion has been made and actually approved to continue this item to the first meeting in June for a review of this to look at it and another way to present to us for approval.
And I just want to verify that it's continued to June 6th without further notice.
It is continued to June 6th without further notice. Thank you very much. We will move on to the next item on the agenda. We have no Planning Commission items. Do we have any Community Development Department updates?
I have no other updates at this time.
Do we have any comments from the commissioners? I think Mr. Sheets told me he did have something.
I did. Could you hand me one of the flyers there? There you go. Okay, just for a sec. I would like
We
to
have one of yours, Mr. Historian.
notify everybody that this weekend will be the trail run and hike for Verdugo Mountains 10K. It'll occur at Brand Park, and you can find all the information on the Parks and Rec website with the city. It's a great event. Our first event was last year. We had about 220 people participate, and they loved it. It was a great event. This year we have over 600 participants. It's becoming a great event. We're getting a lot of sponsors and a lot of support. So whether you want to run it, hike it, or come out and just enjoy the venue, it would be a great opportunity for anybody in the city. And I recommend you come out and at least, if nothing else, just enjoy the scenery and show your support.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commissioners? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We are adjourned.